So, when it comes to kind of having realistic expectations, most parents, myself included, before they have a baby, and maybe even actually during the time they have a baby, will have very unrealistic expectations in terms of sleep. Now, the reason for that is because we often kind of fed these images, maybe by kind of sleep training accounts or products that are selling us these things that are saying that babies should be able to sleep for a really long period and they should be able to sleep independently. Now, that isn't safe and it's not realistic, especially while you've got a newborn. They need to wake really regularly because they've got very small tummies and they need a lot of comfort. And so it's my wish that, parents would be given the message that actually it's going to be quite tricky for the first few months. Your baby is going to wake really regularly. They are going to need a lot of comfort. You're not doing anything wrong. That's exactly what they need to be doing. And just preparing parents for the fact that their sleep is going to be very broken. And so, how do we look at supporting that, especially in those first few months? But really, again, at any period, if you're going through sleep deprivation, which you will do at some point, not because you're doing anything wrong, but because that's what happens with sleep. It's very much up and down, and it isn't linear. So, when you're struggling with sleep, and if you have a kind of a newborn or a young baby and they're waking up really frequently, try to think about how can you support your sleep? Is it possible for you to go to bed earlier? Is it possible? Have you got a partner where you can tag team a little bit, where you can sleep in the morning? Is it possible? And I know this can cause kind of quite a few contentious issues in terms of can you nap in the daytime? Now, that will depend on a lot of factors. Is your baby able to kind of fall asleep in a cot? Most newborns aren't able to do that. So a lot of parents will struggle to sleep during the day because contact napping, to keep your baby safe, you need to be awake. Some parents will choose to kind of do safer bed sharing. So they'll set up their environment so it is safe and they may well be able to take a nap during the daytime. Think about your own particular sleep needs and what you're going to be able to do with the resources around you. Some people are able to take little naps. Some people feel worse for it. Some people feel better for going to bed earlier, or some people feel better for kind of having a lie in the morning, if that's at all possible. These are the kind of things that are going to help you when you're in a period of sleep that's hard. Also, things like getting outside can make a really big difference. In terms of this idea about setting up bed sharing, which is safe, I always talk about this, and that's because the research shows that up to kind of 76% of parents end up bed sharing at some point. And so you may be sitting there thinking, I'm never going to do it. And even if that's you, my advice is just kind of do some research, have a look at what is safe. You can find that on my Instagram at Teach to Sleep for free. But think about your environment. Can you get a firm mattress? Can you make sure that it's kind of loose of bedding? You've only got one pillow behind your head. You've got a duvet that's tucked beneath you so that your baby isn't going to get overheated. But really so that you've thought about the steps that if you fall asleep without planning, that actually at least the area around you is as safe as possible. And that's one of the most important things. And it's actually where the guidance is changing here. And you can find lots of information in terms of safe sleep on the Lullaby Trust. But it's really just about thinking, okay, when I'm going through tough sleep, what I want to do is avoid falling asleep in a dangerous situation, like in an armchair or a sofa. And so if your baby is very much saying to you, I'm not going to go down, actually, I want to sleep right here, which is what a lot of newborns do. You are not doing anything wrong if your newborn wants to be here, but it can then be very, very difficult in terms of your own sleep. So it's just thinking about what you can do to kind of maximize your sleep and kind of maximize as safe as possible sleeping. Now, when it comes to kind of supporting sleep, bedtime routine is really, really helpful. It's something that I always advise to do right from kind of, the offset. And just know that the younger the baby, the shorter really and the most simple you want it to be. So newborns, young babies, you're only looking at kind of 5-10 minute routine. And often parents will say to me, oh, we're not doing a routine. And actually, when I talk to them, they've got a routine. They are changing their baby's nappy, putting them into a sleep seat, feeding them, winding them, and they're going down to sleep. That is a routine. So a routine is a few things that you do in the same order and you do it every night. And what we're doing by having this routine is we're kind of sending that message that we're getting ready to sleep. And it can make your baby feel really kind of safe and secure. And thinking about that routine, just always kind of evaluating it. Is it working for you? Is it actually a bit too long? And you find by the end of it, your baby is kind of just overstimulated and overtired because maybe you're trying to do too many things. Sometimes people kind of get a bit obsessed about having a bath time. If you do a bath time and your baby loves it and it's really enjoyable, great. But if you do the bath time and you realize it starts off really nicely and then you find that as soon as you get your baby out of the water, they're suddenly very upset and you end up kind of trying to really quickly shove their limbs in and it's quite stressful. You don't need to do the bath as part of their bedtime routine. That can be done at another time. But if you've got a baby who's a bit older or who just has quite a bit of energy, bath time can be brilliant because it kind of gets rid of that last energy. In terms of reading stories, if you choose to kind of show a picture book or read a story, but your baby's having none of it and, it can just become stressful. So again, just look at each of the things you do. If you do something like baby massage, is it enjoyable? Do you feel that it adds something? But remember, the younger the baby, the kind of shorter and the more simple you want it to be. The actual falling asleep, that process might take a lot longer. They might want to feed for a really long time. That's normal. They might want to be rocked for a long time. But the actual routine itself can be really kind of short and simple. Okay, so we're going to talk about the bedroom environment. This is kind of for any age. I'm going to talk you through the kind of things that you want to aim for. So when we're talking about nighttime sleep, we want that to be dark, pitch black if possible. That will help your sleep and your baby's sleep. It will help regulate their circadian rhythm. When they get to the age, so around about 8 weeks, when their sleepy hormones are starting to be produced a little bit more, it's really going to support them in terms of kind of being in that nighttime sleep and supporting the melatonin. So that's produced when it gets really, really dark, and that helps them with sleep. When we've got lots of light, cortisol comes in and it's helping your body kind of get ready for the daytime. So if you can, aim for it to be pitch black. If you're feeding in kind of, or using bottles, or you're kind of breastfeeding, changing nappies, any kind of things that you're doing during the nighttime, ideally have a low level night light, but then turn it off. So that's kind of in terms of darkness. If we're thinking about sound, lots of people will choose to have something like a white noise machine. And this is really good for lots of ages. I'm a massive fan. Newborns can be really quite noisy and they can really affect how you get to sleep as well. But the white noise can really help to soothe and settle a baby. So it kind of mimics the sound in the womb. It can help to kind of block out any sounds that might wake up your baby. Noises like car doors or neighbours that you can't really control. And it gives that constant noise. So if you're going to use it, I really recommend that you use it from the time your baby goes to sleep at night right until they wake up in the morning. So it's on throughout the night, even when you wake up and you're doing those feeds and the changing of nappies. Thinking about volume, you want to make sure it's kind of around about 50 decibels, which is the sound of a shower, and not too close to your baby. Again, if you're happy with kind of silence, go for it. It doesn't need to be that you play a particular noise. Making sure that your baby's comfortable. So kind of lots of winding, making sure that the sleep space they're going into, are you swaddling? There's lots of pros and cons with that. So it's worth kind of doing a little bit of reading, making sure that you're doing it safely. So if you are doing it, it's below the shoulders, it's not too tight, and that you stop doing it once they can start rolling or around kind of 4 months. Some babies hate it. So, if your baby doesn't like it, you don't have to do it. And then thinking about the temperature. So the Lullaby Trust recommends around 16 to 20 degrees Celsius. Now, there's some new guidance on this because obviously it's really difficult times in terms of energy prices. And so I've put up on my Instagram very recently, there's a post there all about kind of looking at the layers and the types of sleeping bags you might be using. So thinking about kind of temperature, but if you're ever worried about your baby, just check here. So you want to ideally check on their torso, 2 fingers. That will give you a really good indication of what their body temperature is like. So their extremities, their hands and their feet will generally feel very cold. And so that won't give you an accurate gauge of how their body temperature is. And you can use the feeling of this to kind of gauge in terms of the layers of clothes to wear, or the kind of the tog, the thickness of the sleeping bag, or the blanket you're using. Now that's all to do with kind of nighttime sleep. When babies are sleeping during the daytime, and this is for babies up until and including 6 months old, you want your baby to be very close to you. So you can keep a really close eye on them. So you're not doing kind of daytime sleep in the darkness. Often people will have their babies napping right here, or they may be in a bassinet, in the same room as them, the TV on, hopefully a cup of tea. But the main thing to remember is that they are in a safe position, so they're on their back. If they are on you, just making sure that they haven't got a chin to chest position, so they've got their windpipe clear, and that you're able to you're awake and you're keeping a close eye on them. But daytime sleep, it's you kind of looking after them, not a monitor.